One simple way to use Explain Everything, which I think is powerful in my subject anyway, is in doing an exam question, showing how to go about answering an exam question and then marking someone's work. In this case, this is a Year 8 assessment, but it's effectively written in the same way as a Key Stage 4 assessment, so I would go through the same process. So here we have two interpretations or sources, and the students are asked which one they find most convincing. And so what you can see is that there is a mark scheme at the bottom and the two sources at the top. And what I want to do first is show how I would go about planning a question like this if I were to get it, and then look at a student's answer and mark it according to that mark scheme at the bottom. So for this first one, I'd say to them, I want you to, first of all, the question says, which of the two sources do you find most convincing? And level 1 here suggests that they need a simple understanding of the sources. So that's where they'd start off. So the first thing is they're going to read the sources. And interpretation A says, I'm not staying here with that murdering bastard. And of course the key I'd like them to underline, or to highlight I should say, what we think are key words, in this case murdering bastard. And interpretation B, Cromwell was 50% saint, 50% serpent, so they're hopefully they're thinking, what are the key words there? Okay. What I want them to be able to understand is there's a difference in the view of Cromwell between those two men have a different view. So that's the first thing I'd want them to do when I was going through it. So I'd say, level 1, how is view different? Forgive me, this pen isn't brilliant for writing on the screen with, but okay. Now, the next stage, if you look at level 2, which is here, it asks them to use some simple knowledge to explain either the content, which is what it tells you, this is the content, or the provenance. Effectively, the provenance is this information here, and that is who said it, what was their motivation in saying it, when were they saying it, and can we trust it because of that. So we'll start off with the content. So the first thing I'd want us to think about is, well, he suggests that Bertie Ahern suggests that Cromwell is a murdering bastard. So in terms of content there, well, is it true or is it false? So if I do a little smiley face for true, what knowledge do I have that he was a murdering bastard? Well, one thing that I know is that he ordered the murder of unarmed soldiers in Ireland. So I know that this is partly true, and I'm going to use my evidence, which is this, the murder of unarmed soldiers, to say it's true. But really what I'm also looking for with students is to say why it's not true. So what do we know about Cromwell that means that's not true? And effectively they do that for both of the sources. Now if we're talking about the provenance, I'll just do this in blue, well, this guy is Bertie Ahern. So who is Bertie Ahern? Well, he's the Irish Prime Minister. So if I just call that provenance for the time being, and you would want the students to be asking, well, can I trust Bertie Ahern to talk about the Irish? And of course we can link it directly back to this, can't we? And we can say, and I'd be hoping they'd be able to say as students, well, he's the Irish Prime Minister, perhaps he's going to be angry about the fact that Cromwell was considered brutal in Ireland, therefore can I trust him or not? And I'd want them to do that for both. And you can see, again, I'd refer back to the mark scheme and I'd say for level 2 or level 3, it's really a question of the level of depth you go into in terms of your knowledge and in terms of your reflecting on the provenance. Now the last thing here, I'll take a different colour this time, what shall I have? There are other ones, but I'll go back to this, is judgment. So level 4 type stuff is overall you have to compare them. Which is more useful to the historian? They're both useful, all sources are useful, which one do you think is more useful? In other words, which one is more accurate and which one do you think is less likely to be a biased source? Okay, so I would talk through the process with them, and then what I'd want them to do is, or what I'd want to do is maybe mark an answer to a similar question. In this case, I'm going to do the actual question. So if next slide, which is to the, where is it? Right. Okay, and this is an actual question. And what could be really powerful here is marking the answer so they can then see, well, how does this answer relate back to the mark scheme that we've just been through. So here's the question, and what am I doing? Well, first of all, I'm looking for that level 1 that we just talked about, and I'm looking for them to tell me whether it's what does each sort say and how they're different. So he says, interpretation A tells me that the Irish people are still not pleased with what was done in their land and to their people. Okay, I can see this because Bertie Ahern has described Cromwell as a bastard, and bastard isn't a word that you associate with a good person. Well, that's good. He's understanding that. Whereas interpretation B says that Cromwell was 50% holy man and 50% serpent. I think that this extract, serpent, means snake. In some stories, snakes and serpents are associated with tricking people. In the Genesis story, he gets tricked. Now, that's all very well. He understands it, but what I can see there is that he's not directly compared. So, as an EBI, for example, I'd say compare the two. He hasn't directly said why one is different to the other. Okay. Now, what I want him to be thinking about, is he doing any of the level 2 or level 3 or level 4 stuff? So interpretation A is true, so we're down onto this paragraph here now. Interpretation A is true, but it leaves out some of the other good things that Cromwell has done. So I know he's doing that content stuff there in his done to this country, such as he brought back Jews who had been sent away. Good. And he formed one of the greatest armies in the world. Good. Even though Cromwell has done good things, it doesn't cover the way he treated Catholics in Ireland. So he's doing the content stuff. Now let's see if he continues to do that. Interpretation B is also true because Oliver Cromwell was a Puritan, 50% snake, excellent, and he tricked a lot of people because he said all men were equal, but he killed a man who put these things into practice by telling everyone this and handing out leaflets saying all men were equal. His name was John Lilburne. I think he's in there in that level 3 content area because there's lots of knowledge in there, which is excellent. Okay, but what he hasn't done is given me any of the provenance. So I think for my what worked well, I would definitely be saying his reflection on content. But for his EBI, for me, he's got to reflect on the provenance, and that would be something. So he's got to reflect on Bertie Ahern and whether we can trust him or not, and the historian and whether we can trust him or not.